All right, everybody. At the next cocktail party, we're going to see who sits at the Moderna, Pfizer, or J&J table. Anyways, here we go. Welcome to DisrupTV. We're in the green room, and we're going to do some quick introductions of our guests before we go live. We're going to go backwards in terms of order. So, Michael, please tell us where you're calling in from, what you're going to be talking about today.
Hey, Ray. Great to be here. I'm calling in from the New York area, East Coast boy, born and raised. Great to see you guys. I like to talk about cloud and where we are and where it's going and whether or not there's a version 2.0 out there.
All right, that's gonna be awesome. We're gonna go to Tiffany. Tiffany, where are you calling in from? Hopefully some nice island, but I doubt it. But go ahead. What are we gonna talk about?
I wish. I'm calling in from Los Angeles, California, but my heart is in Hawaii. So good call, Ray. Good call. And I'm here to talk about all things growth, how businesses are getting back to growth, looking at the end of this pandemic.
All right, that's wonderful. And Aneel, where are you calling in from? What are we going to talk about today?
Well, first of all, I think Tiffany's boss is in Hawaii.
He's the boss.
From boring San Francisco, my home office, and I want to talk about whatever you and Val want to talk about, Ray.
All right, this is really cool. So, hey, we're going to jump into the show. Elle's going to do the honors. I want to thank our sponsors, Robots and Pencils, and more importantly, thanking for you for watching the show for the last 5 years and making it the #1 enterprise tech show out there. So, anyways, go ahead, Elle. Let's do the honors, and we'll jump right in.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, our distinguished guests your questions using hashtag DisrupTV, and we will do our best to answer them live. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wang. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business. And breaking news, in a couple of months, he's going to have his new book, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Ray, I need my copy. He's a regular television business and technology news contributor. You see him daily on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, and Cheddar. He's a global sought-after keynote speaker, and in my humble opinion, one of the top futurists to follow on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. Here with my awesome co-host, Vala Afshar. As he mentioned, he's the Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of The Pursuit of Social Business Excellence. Executives around the world pay attention to every one of his tweets, and more importantly, they're inspirational and insightful. When he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, you can find him here on business TV outlets, as well as Bloomberg, and of course, insightful analyses on ZDNet. But it's not about us. It's about our awesome guests. Who do we have to kick it off today?
Ray, it's an honor for you and I to have Aneel Bhusri, a co-founder and co-CEO at Workday. Aneel has been a leader, product visionary, innovator in the enterprise software industry for more than 20 years. Before co-founding Workday in 2005, Aneel held a number of leadership positions at PeopleSoft, including vice chairman of the board and senior vice president responsible for product strategy, business development, and marketing. In addition to his role at Workday, Aneel is an advisory partner at Greylock, a leading venture capital firm he has been associated with since 1999. Aneel is member of the Board of Trustees at Stanford University. He also serves as Board of Directors of Workday Foundation of the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center as well. Aneel previously served on Board of Directors of several other companies, including Intel, Pure Storage, and Okta. Please follow Aneel on Twitter at ANEELB. Welcome, Aneel, to DisrupTV.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be with you.
Great to have you. Great to have you.
Hey, we're really excited to have you here, and we're not going to talk about the usual stuff. I want to talk a little bit about, where we are, right? We're in this cloud revolution. It's been 20 years. We've been talking about the cloud for 20 years. This is ridiculous, right? But you're the godfather of Silicon Valley, and you're seeing where all the ventures are going, where all the startups are headed, and more importantly, we want to know what the trends are, because you get to see what's happening, not just in your ecosystem, but beyond this ecosystem of Silicon Valley. So what's hot?
Well, The Godfather, man, that makes you feel old. But I like that. That reminds me of that movie, Old School. I think so. Every architectural change, there's a period of time, and then there's a new, better architecture, right? So, in the case of mainframe, it was replaced by minis, and then minis replaced by client server, then web, then cloud. I think this one is actually the right long-term one, and we're just going to continue to build on this cloud architecture. So the first part was process automation and having a configuration model versus a customization model. Now it's about data, and going forward, it's going to be about prediction. And I think this architecture is just going to get layer on layer built on top of it. And for a company like Workday, we don't feel like we need to be in all the layers. And in 2005, we built out our own data centers, but with the Microsofts and Googles and Amazons of the world, we can actually move on from being a data center company. We still are now, but in a decade, I don't think we will be. And we'll be much more focused on the data, the insights from the data. And then I think the future is going to be something called composite applications that we've talked about forever, but finally might actually come to reality in the next few years.
I heard you speak at Davos last year, and you talked about Workday's future expansion into the ERP space. You said at that time, this was I think February of 2020, 20% HR penetration, about 5% in the finance world. So incredible growth in front of you, becoming a more global company. And of course, this was right before the pandemic, a few months before the pandemic. And as a proud Workday customer, Salesforce, it's such a great realization what a powerful tool it is in terms of just employee engagement, retention, recruitment. It's just a vital tool for companies that want to compete and grow in this hyper-connected digital economy. Now, we've had experts on the show from Accenture, from Deloitte, that spoke to the pandemic was perhaps a 10-year accelerant in terms of cultural, like working from home as an example, and digital, like e-commerce acceleration. What have you experienced? Because you're on a daily basis talking to the biggest, most successful CHROs in the world. What has happened in the last 14 months? And the success of Workday shows what a pivotal role your company plays in terms of ensuring how companies compete and win in this new normal.
Yeah, well, it's a great question, Val. I'd say it really depended on the product area. So when you think about Workday, our strategy is plan, execute, analyze. Plan with Workday Adaptive Planning, execute with HR, finance, procurement, and analyze with Prism Analytics. During the pandemic, the planning side went through the roof because people were having to redo their plans every couple of weeks. No one knew exactly how the pandemic was going to play out. On the HR side, employee engagement rose to the top. You couldn't see your employees. So how could you engage with them with technology? We acquired a company called Peakon just a month ago, really to address the real cutting edge of employee engagement. I would say in core finance, people put the pause on, which is we're not going to do a finance replacement during the pandemic, but we know we need to change out our finance systems because they were not flexible enough to deal with the changing world of COVID. And then analytics continue to be strong. So, I was very nervous having gone through 08, 09 with Workday and what an economic downturn looks like. And so we battened down the hatches and prepared for the worst, and the worst didn't come. We actually had a really good year. I'm proud of our team because we took care of our customers. First and foremost, we had to take care of our customers. And first and foremost, we took care of our employees. We took care of our customers. And many of our customers are companies like, Walmart and General Motors and Home Depot and Whole Foods. These are companies on the front lines of the pandemic, and they took care of us. And so we felt like we had a role to play to make sure that we all came out okay. And every one of the major pharmaceutical companies is a Workday customer, and boy, they saved our bacon. There's no other way to say it. They saved our bacon, and so we just feel lucky to come out the other end.
Absolutely.
No, it's been crazy. And we've been seeing a change in terms of how the work is happening, the future of work. I mean, companies are doing vaccine drives in their offices. I think you guys were just doing one as well. I mean, people are looking at, different types of hybrid work models. People are looking at recruiting and jobs differently. Skills and competency are completely changing, right? And it's really a brand new world out there. What changes in this environment after the pandemic? And what goes back to what we were doing before, like in your mind?
Well, Toby from Shopify, who I'm a big fan of Toby, basically said
Toby,
2030 came a decade early. He was right. You think about telemedicine, same way. telemedicine had been held up for years because of legal issues. The pandemic hits, we take away those legal issues, and now over 50% of doctors' visits in the last 6 months have been done over telemedicine. These are good things that have happened out of a really terrible situation. You know, from my perspective, the cloud just got its second boost. Anybody running on-premise technologies, we had a top 5 retailer in the U.S. who was not a Workday customer and became a customer because of the pandemic. They said, you know, we just need the flexibility of these cloud solutions. It's not just us; it's our good friends at Salesforce. It's ServiceNow. We don't provide these solutions that are stuck in the ground for 5 years. Our solutions are organic and they're constantly changing, and they meet the changing needs of the customers. And so I just think that's going to continue to that's going to accelerate. And on-premise technology probably got a hit that they'll never recover from. Where it was a slow path to oblivion, and now I think it's a faster path to oblivion. In terms of employee engagement, it's surprising. Shouldn't be surprising, but how it jumped to the top of every CEO's list.
Unbelievable. Everybody.
They couldn't see their employees. They didn't know how they were doing. And they all realized that in this environment, their employees were the key resource they had to make it through the pandemic. And I think it's great. It puts CHROs from being back office people to front office people, to being partners with the CEOs to make sure that, really taking care of our people. I know there's unemployment, but for many of the industries, there's negative unemployment. We can't find enough folks, and for those industries, they're working really hard to keep the people they have and make sure they really understand what's on their minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what we admire most is, the work that Workday does in the philanthropic space. You're consistently named one of the best places to work. But Aneel, when I think about the last, 14, 15 months, health crisis, economic crisis, climate crisis, burnings and floods coast to coast. It was an election year, so the political climate was very difficult. So a combination of all of these, as a CEO, you must have had some difficult conversations because we're all struggling, some much more than others.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, because the perception of you is a little bit opposite of most Silicon Valley CEOs. I mean, you're known for your modesty, your patience, your long-term oriented thinking and philosophy. So there's certain characteristics that you exhibit that are role models for other CEOs, big companies and startups. Can you talk a little bit about what it felt to have this awesome responsibility to being a CEO of a very admired company, knowing your stakeholders, your employees, customers, or partners are going through really difficult times?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the nice words. I'm not sure I deserve those. I had the great fortune of growing up in my business career under Dave Duffield, who is one of the kindest, nicest, most humble people in the world. And if Dave doesn't have an ego, how could I have an ego, right? And we've been together. We're coming up on our 30th year, and we've never had an argument in 30 years. I mean, he's just an amazing human being, and I do take a lot of cues from him. And not to suck up to Salesforce and you, Val, but I take a lot of cues from Mark. Mark was very early on stakeholder, really the stakeholder mentality, not the shareholder mentality, on the 1-1-1 model. So we pretty much, for Republic, we sat down and had a long meal, and he really gave me a tutorial on what to do to be that kind of company. And then you follow your values. And in today's world, it's really tricky. There are questions that come up that are politics. And as a CEO, I have to avoid those because I've got employees on both sides of the politics. Then there are questions that come up that are about basic human values and human rights. And those I weigh in. And then there's some in the gray area, but most tend to be one or the other. And when it's around, Black Lives Matter, well, we're going to weigh in big time on that. When it relates to immigration, we're going to weigh in big time on that. When it relates to, Democrats and Republicans going at each other, first of all, with some of these new legislation, you got to read all 98 pages. There's a lot. You can't read the press. You got to read the 98 pages. And I always tell myself I represent both sides and so from that perspective, I tend to stay pretty silent on the political stuff.
Makes sense.
So let's take a step back and say, look, you get to start all over. You're going to build a brand new startup. There's some cool technologies. We see where analytics, automation, and AI are going. We see where 5G, augmented reality. We see quantum starting to play a role. All these things are out there. We see interesting opportunities in business to bring together disparate groups, opportunities, things that didn't exist before. There's networks. What kind of new startup would you be looking at, and what do you see as a great market opportunity
Today.
Today,
Today,
are we gonna have like the Aneel coin, the Workday coin?
Yeah, I'm a laggard on that front, but we'll see. First and foremost, I know it's going to sound like a broken record, but it is a lot about the data. The beauty of the cloud architectures is that they are normalized. They're not customized. So I look at our 3,000 HR customers, our 5,000 planning customers, they're all working off the same model. So when you aggregate the data, you can actually gain real insight on their behalf. And we do that. We recognize it's their data. We don't take any risks with their data, and we don't charge them for that. We give them those results if they let us use their data in an anonymous way. We can tell them how long does it take an average company to hire an engineer? How about in your industry? How about in your geography? And that data is really valuable to benchmark. But all of that predictive instrumentation, I'm a big fan of prediction machines from those three Toronto professors. I think that book is back there somewhere. Yeah, prediction machines. That is where the future is going. Now, I think the trick for a startup is you need access to data. So you have to convince customers that they should share their data with you. In the case of Workday, we have access to data, but I think that is a tricky part. The part that's overlooked in the enterprise world, to me, are all the industry solutions. So HR has gone to the cloud, finance has gone to the cloud, Salesforce is taking everything customer facing into the cloud, ServiceNow is taking IT in the cloud. But if you're a financial services company, if you've got a claims processing system, you've got a banking system, you've got a portfolio management system, those are still largely on premise. If you're in the utilities, your billing system is on premise. If you're manufacturing, your supply chain manufacturing system are on premise. And that to me is wide open territory that I hope we'll exploit some of it. We're doing it with the student system. But if I were an entrepreneur today, I'd pick one of those and just try to crush it. I look at Viva, what they're doing with life cycle management for pharmaceuticals, like, wow, great.
Absolutely.
Would you get to a point where would you get to the point where you build the software, give it away for free, and then charge people for insights so that you can get the biggest collection of data?
I think I could see a world like that in 10 years.
Okay.
But the first part, and this is really up to you, Ray and Val, you guys are the geniuses. We got to really educate customers how to use their data. It's still early days. And
absolutely.
I would say on the HR side, we're not as far along as customers who are using it on the CRM side, but HR is getting there. But we need to show customers the value of the insights. And I could see us going in that way.
The HR and accounting professionals that use Workday that I speak to, they're excited about the machine learning work that's embedded in your solutions. From career pathing individuals, making predictions in terms of how the type of training and type of engagements they need to have to get to different levels within their career. On the the auditing side of the house, where you're doing audit predictions, where you're providing exception-based insights, so that you can fast path to places where you can take that process rigor and optimize and reduce cost for businesses. So as a pioneer in the ML space, it must excite you knowing that you're going from prediction to prescriptive use of analytics, where you're actually giving advice to these professionals in terms of what to do for the next best action and outcome. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing on the ML side?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd say that was a great ad for Workday. Thank you, Val.
It's true.
You can keep replaying it here.
That's exactly what we do. We have really, I hate to come back to that book, but I love that book, Prediction Machines, because it paints a world where machines and humans coexist in a very positive way. Machines aren't replacing humans. Machines are great at taking massive amounts of data, making predictions, but they don't know how to apply value or judgment against those, right? So machines might tell you it's going to rain, but they can't tell you what to do about that.
Exactly.
And so what I love about our ML strategy, it's all about leveraging people's brains, but sifting through massive amounts of data to make a prediction, and then you make a determination on that prediction. For my employee, this is the career path that's suggested. Well, is that the right career path? My judgment is no, not for this individual, or yes. It just sifts through a lot of data, gives you points in time to make decisions that really matter, moments that matter. And then the algorithms get smarter over time. And so I think if we can just maintain that partnership between humans using judgment and machines going through so much data that a human can get through for 5 or 6 years, and they can do it in minutes, why not do that the right way, right?
Absolutely. And we don't have time to get into this, but I also love Workday's vision and strategy on credentialing and blockchain. I know you said you may be a laggard on the crypto side, but you're definitely not a laggard on a best use case for blockchain.
Yeah, there's a lot of great use cases of blockchain that we've learned from crypto. And I do think over time you're going to see us do more and more in terms of credentials and identity, because we do. Today Workday could actually deliver, if we wanted to, a vaccine passport. I don't think it's where this country wants to go, but we have identity coming from the HR system or from some other HR system. We can use blockchain technology to validate it, and you could carry around your vaccine credentials as a passport instead of a piece of paper. I mean, we're in 2021 and we're carrying around a piece of paper with our vaccine credentials.
Hand signed. It's amazingly hand signed.
Hand signed.
It's pretty wild. Well, we are here with Aneel Bhusri, co-founder, co-CEO, and chairman of Workday. I hope you come back on again in the future, and I hope we get a chance to catch up with you somewhere on a golf course.
You guys are great. If I could just say one last thing, I hope everybody out there is staying safe and healthy, and all the best to coming out of this pandemic and everybody getting back on track. And Ray and Val, look forward to getting a beer with you guys in person.
Thank you, sir. That's awesome.
Thank you. All right. Wow. That's
one of the most successful, HR cloud company in the world, and it's amazing. He's too young to be called Godfather, but he really is the Godfather in that space. And I'm absolutely not going to mention Godmother for our next guest. Absolutely not. So it's our privilege. And it's actually, I'm so lucky because I get to work with her on a daily, weekly basis. Our next guest is Tiffani Bova, who is the Senior Vice President, Chief Growth Evangelist at Salesforce, author of, and I'm showing off because I'm showing you a proof copy. So this tells me, this tells you Tiffani was sharing this with me before the rest of you guys. So best-selling author of Growth IQ, Get Smarter About Choices That Will Make or Break Your Business. By the way, there's no better time for you to crack this open again and read it. We're going to talk about why. Tiffani has been named to the latest Thinkers 50 list of the world's top management thinkers and is a welcome guest on Bloomberg, BNN, Cheddar, MSNBC, Yahoo Finance, among others. Tiffani also contributes her thinking to publications including Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and many other major media publications. As the host of What's Next, by the way, the guests she gets on this show is ridiculous.
Amazing.
What's Next with Tiffani Bova, Seth Godin, Arianna Huffington, I mean, you name it. Kara Swisher, an iTunes all-time business and management bestseller and top sales podcast, according to Top Sales Magazine. Tiffani has interviewed growing number of exceptional people. Check it out. What's Next with Tiffani Bova. Tiffani's a top Twitter influencer in business growth, customer experience, digital transformation, and future of work and sales. She was named by Inc. magazine top sales expert you need to follow on Twitter, and a LinkedIn top sales expert to follow in 2018, 2019, 2020, and we're waiting for the 21 list to come out. So we unfortunately have 20 minutes left, so I can't list all the awards she's won. She's a must follow on Twitter at Tiffani, _Bova, BOVA. Welcome back to Disrupt TV.
I need to like capture that, send it to my mom. She thinks I fix printers. She has no idea. Sort of.
Listen, I had to cut your bio short by a mile. So, you're giving me imposter syndrome, by the way. But thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. No place I'd rather be.
Thank you.
Well, hey, we're coming out of this. We think we're coming out of this. And so, I wonder, like, how's your book doing? How's it going forward? Like, are people picking this up saying, we're about to hit amazing growth? I need to come back and read this thing. So how's everything going on your end?
So it was very interesting to listen to Aneel, right? Because, over the last 14 months, so much digital transformation has happened so much faster than it was happening sort of pre-pandemic. I was in the early days of the cloud as well. I worked for the US's largest web hosting company from 1999 to 2004. We were selling the World Wide Web, and domain names at the time were like, I don't know, $7. No, they were actually like $75 back then. And, I was a Loqua's beta client. I was Constant Contact's beta client. I was selling this thing called the cloud to try to get companies, even like Workday, right, to not build data centers, but to host it with us. And it was a really difficult then, sort of, from 2000 to 2010. But then in 2010, it started to become a little bit more mainstream. Many small businesses today don't even have websites and don't even have their own domain names. They're still using Gmail or AOL, for those of you who might remember. And so they got caught really flat-footed when the economy just sort of shut down overnight. They didn't have the ability to keep their doors open. So what's been really great over the last 14 months is seeing the resilience of so many businesses stepping up and figuring out what they can do and getting themselves, if you will, back to growth. But it's also been interesting to see some businesses completely spin into totally different directions, knowing maybe where they were focused was not going to sort of take them where they need to grow going forward. So, we used to manufacture, cups, and now we're doing PPE equipment, right? We used to do something else, or even these amazing partnerships that have happened between competing pharmaceutical companies, or like Salesforce and CVS, like unusual partnerships to solve these really big problems. Once again, to get back to growth, but also to really solve, the things that we need today.
What was brilliant in your book was that, it started by developing a thesis that says the one thing is it's never just one thing. So you purposefully built a growth blueprint based on 10 levers: customer experience, customer base penetration, market acceleration, product expansion, customer and product diversification, sales optimization, churn management, partnerships, co-opetition, and unconventional strategies, which, boy, have you seen quite a bit of those since this decentralized digital-only world due to the pandemic. Okay, and you were brilliant to write this blueprint in Growth IQ before the pandemic. Do any of these 10 growth levers rise more to the top, given what we've experienced since March of last year?
Well, the funny thing is that when I wrote the book, one of the very first pages that I wrote said, look, Bain had done some research that said 85% or so, high 80s % of companies, the reason they were unable to build consistent and repeatable growth was internal inertia.
Wow.
And then I put a period. Then right after that, I said, unless there's a black swan event. I swear that's what I said.
Wow. It is here. Yeah.
And now I'm like, I immediately call my publisher. Can we erase that line? Like, because I want to keep like, right. Okay. Anyway.
But as a Gartner fellow, it doesn't surprise me that you're providing insights and guardrails so people understand it. As Mark says, you have to have that beginner's mindset. You have to be able to pivot, given the circumstance.
So the answer to that is you're correct. It's never one thing. But when the pandemic first hit, I started to say to customers and clients, and really when I was speaking at events virtually, is that this was the year, this is 2020, was the year of the customer base and not necessarily the net new customer, right? Really digging into, number one, make sure your customers were okay. Is there anything you can do? A lot of the work we did here at Salesforce, we had 1 million conversations that ended up being 1.5 million that have ended up being 6.5 million. But, reaching into the base of customers and asking them what they need from you today and what they need from you tomorrow. Now, you can't just ask the question like, hey, Mr. or Miss Customer, what do you need from me? Hold on. You can't, otherwise you end up in this sort of Steve Jobs. Steve didn't go out and go, hey, what do you need from me? And they said, I need this. First generation.
Wow.
Whoa.
I'm old.
Listen, she's a techie.
Like
She's a techie. She's a sales expert, world top expert. But believe you me, I've seen her in action. She can go as deep as you want to go when it comes to technology. So
if you ask the question, what do you want? They're not going to say this.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to say something like, oh, when I'm running, I lose radio signal. Right. Or when I'm running, I don't want to listen to the same CD or tape.
My CD skips when I'm running. No, I was kidding.
Or it skips when I'm running. Right. And so you have to be listening for those signals of what customers are really the jobs that are trying to be done. And so when you think about growth, right, regardless of what path, it's about what job are you solving today? And do you need to be solving it in the future? There's the famous quote of, do people buy 1/4-inch drills or do they buy 1/4-inch holes? I actually think they build hanging a shelf on the wall, which is neither of the other two, right? Because that's the job they really want done. So when you start to uncover that, I think selling into your basic customers, understanding what they need, optimizing the way you actually generate revenue, and then, of course, keeping an eye on both employee and customer experience.
That employee experience piece is huge. And I think you've been talking about this, about how it could double growth. I think there was something you were writing about, talking about Lamborghini and their success focusing on employees. Let's go deep on that if you can. So.
Yeah, it was a hypothesis. And look, I wasn't the first to think of this, right? But it was a hypothesis I had on stage where I would say, look, I don't think it's a coincidence that Salesforce is one of the best places to work globally. I think in 17 countries, it's #1, and the rest of the world is probably in the top 5. It's one of the most innovative companies in the world. And then it's the fastest growing enterprise software company. I said, there has to be a connection between that. So I went to our CMO at the time, Tiffani Bova, and I said, hey, would you be willing to let me sort of test out this hypothesis? And sure enough, she said yes. So we did a research project with Forbes Insight. And lo and behold, we found that companies that were very strong on EX and CX had 1.8x faster growth than those that were not. Now, it wasn't in reverse, right? Just because you had fast growth didn't mean you had a good employee experience or customer experience, right?
Wait. Let's go back to that point.
Yes.
Those, you have to have one before the other is what you're saying here. So
you have to have one before the other, and it doesn't work the other way, right? And Val and I actually had this conversation that the definition of experience has greatly changed pre-pandemic and today. Maybe it was coffee and foosball tables and wellness floors and all of that. And now it's safety, work from anywhere, remote tools, Workday, all the things in order to keep us connected, or Slack or Salesforce, whatever it might be. And so that experience goes a long way, but it also how you hire, how you train, when you train, is it 19 systems to answer a customer question? Not a great employee experience.
Absolutely. The biggest companies in the world, some of the fastest growing companies in the world, come to you for expert futuristic advice in terms of sales. And it's more and more sales. I see you guiding them on marketing and customer service. So I see the lines of business blending, and some of the leverage that you reference here can be applied to building a healthy marketing, healthy commerce, healthy service. It's really about mindset and discipline and optimism and planning. So there's a lot of pressure because they're looking to you to tell them what sales is going to look like 5-10 years from now. So can you give us some advice, or where do you see sales going? What should we expect from chief revenue officers in 2025 as compared to what we expect from them today?
Well, I think the digitization of business is really changing what those revenue officers may be watching, number one. And number two, who may be doing the selling. So I love sort of tossing this one out. What happens when things sell to things? Like, what does the forecast call look like in that situation?
Who's doing the forecasting, actually?
Right. Like, how do you train the thing to sell better to the other thing? And how do you know if it's a good experience? And so that whole connection of human and machine, which of course Ray is really, one of the leaders in thinking about, but thinking about, I always say the new power couple is human and technology, not one or the other, and not one in spite of the other. But there are some times when it's only human and sometimes where it might only be machine. And so I've really started pivoting into that only machine type of revenue generation, where it is an AI, it is a bot, it is some kind of technology that is generating that revenue as an augmentation to what your humans may be doing, not in place of, right? There's been lots of research out there where they've made predictions that sellers would go away. And I don't agree with it. I think the role of sellers will change, and who is doing the selling will change.
We had Scott Galloway here on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he predicted Amazon will be the fastest growing company in the healthcare space.
Yes.
And his thesis is based on the fact that, with Whole Foods, with insurance, with, Amazon Prime, they have so much data about you. And of course, they are an AI company. So being able to predict health habits and recommend, like you said, running shoes, or again, with wearable technology, your sleeping patterns. I mean, they could become the most trusted advisor in terms of where you should spend your dollars, hard-earned dollars, to stay the most healthy. So I can see things coming into
There's two things there. Like the day my bathroom scale talks to my Fitbit, locks my refrigerator, pulls the car up to the gym. I want everybody to know I'm out. I'm out.
But your healthcare premiums go down. Your healthcare premiums will go down.
Tiffany, that's around the corner. I hate to tell you, it's around the corner. Now, not for you, because your scale is going to always be telling you, hey, I have a triathlete standing on me now. So,
well, but what I'd say about Amazon is, they've been masterful at building the moat, right? And they're also really good at staying close to that core. But one of the chapters in the book is customer and product diversification. Healthcare would be a customer or product diversification for them, but it may be the same customer. Look, I know you buy these vitamins. I know because they know my shopping habits and my shopping patterns. Almost going back to what you were talking about with Aneel, right? Being much more predictive and prescriptive on how you're pushing, or introducing new kinds of services and offers and products to customers where you've already earned permission, which is why the existing base of customers is such an untapped growth engine for so many companies. And they absolutely ignore it because they're so focused on net new logos, they forget the gold they already have.
Customer acquisition cost, right? You can drive them down, get your existing customers to buy more, expand on top of that. I mean, it's a key philosophy behind what's going on. So, but hey, let's talk about where this future is, right? I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, is sales ever going to stay the same? Does sales change in this amount? And does that also change the way leadership is, right? In terms of how we actually bring executives to the table?
So, I have been in and around technology and selling technology for since 1994-ish. So it's been a minute. And this really, regardless of the fact that I work at Salesforce, this is the first time I really feel like technology has shown up to deliver on the promise to the sellers that have been made over the last 2 or 3 decades.
Fine.
I used to use Excel spreadsheets and bubblegum and some Post-it notes, and then I used a single user version of Act and Goldmine, and then I sort of advanced to
Goldmine.
I'm old, right? And then now, to beta offers from Salesforce back in 2002. So, I would say that it's been great to watch that this pandemic has sort of forced sellers to use technology that they might have resisted before. It was like, look, I have to sell face-to-face. The only way I can establish is I got to look them in the eye. I got to shake their hand. I need to take them to a golf course and have dinner and do all the things that they do. And now we've really learned that technology can allow us to establish maybe even equal, if not better, relationships with customers. It respects time, all kinds of things, right? So I think that if sellers are open, companies are open, and don't use CRM as just a productivity tool or a forecast tool or a pipeline tool, because it's a very expensive one if you're doing that, and really using it as, this, what's the next best action? What do customers want from us? What should we be doing? What's working? What's not working? And then get into that beginner's mind, as Vala said, really thinking differently about how you're going to grow. And absolutely, I will tell you, growth is a thinking game. Don't outspend, don't out-hire, don't out-innovate, out-think, because it's a combination of all of those things. And I think that's where the power really is.
Great advice, great advice. All three of us share a common friend who we all admire deeply, Tom Peters. And I have seen numerous conversations with you and Tom. That's right.
Hey,
absolutely. Yeah,
Tom's
and the endorsement from you on the cover. Yes. And I have seen numerous conversations with you and Tom talking about equality, inclusive leadership. You're a sponsor and a mentor. You're a champion of inclusive leadership at Salesforce and all of the stakeholders that Salesforce touch. Your social feed constantly reminds business leaders the importance of inclusion and diversity, importance of equal pay for equal work. give advice. Share with us the advice you give to CEOs or CXOs when they come to you and say, Tiffani, you're a role model executive. Tell us how we can improve our inclusiveness in our company, improve our ability to promote individuals and bring more diversity in our culture. What do you tell them?
So, I used to tell them one thing. I sort of had this story I would sort of share. And very early, maybe about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to speak at the UN. So I spoke at the United Nations for Girls and Women 2030.
What an honor. Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
And, it was one of those things, right, where you sort of pull up and it's the guard gate and you walk in, and I walk through the halls and there's the Nelson Mandela statue, and just the whole thing. It's I have goosebumps talking about it. It's one of those things like forever will be one of those top three, right, that I've been able to do in my career. Yeah. Yep. And a company called IdeaGen, and it was lots of teenage girls in the audience and mothers and a couple of dads, and then speakers talking about what does it look like for girls and women 2030, and how do we get there and align to these SDGs. And I'll tell you, at the end of that session, I walked out going, wow, I had no idea, right? There's so much more we can learn about the lack of opportunity, how we help play a role in offering up that opportunity. People just want chances. And so this whole thing was about a competition for girls competing to make innovative developments. And so they go around the world, they pick these teams, and then 8 teams come to compete. So from the UN, the following week, I flew to back to San Francisco, and it was at Andreessen on campus. You had to pitch. So these little girls, under 13, had to pitch their innovation.
Love it.
So some were from South Africa, some were from Asia, some were from Europe, a couple from the US, and then you would vote on who would win, and then the winner was picked on the Google campus, and the CEO of Google handed them the award. Talk about this, right? These little girls have no idea.
Event,
Yeah, low profile event.
Low profile, right? And I'm sitting there going this is fantastic, right?
Awesome.
And they were inventing things literally, a little girl said, my grandmother has dementia in Japan, and she walks around, she gets lost, so I'm going to make something so I can find her, right? Not knowing the technology we may have in other parts of the world, right? So really democratizing technology has such impact to people's lives. That was one example. Another was, this girl in Africa saying, 50% of the girls I go to school with never come back. They are walking home and they're never seen again.
They're kidnapped. They never come back. Yeah.
They never come back.
Wow.
Or they're, sexually mutilated, or, it was awful. And you're listening to this and you see the power of how they're trying to fix it. And they're 12, 13, 14. And you go, this is what it's all about, right? This is what it's all about. How do you create opportunity to have these young kids solve these big problems that adults seem to not be able to figure out, right? And to change the world. That's what empowers, excites me about sort of inclusion, is that story right there is the one I now tell.
It's not about thinking the change, it's about making the change. And that's really the big shift that's been going on here.
Thank you, Tiffani.
Hey, Tiffani, thank you so much for being here.
Of
Tiffani
course.
Bova, SVP Global Growth Evangelist at Salesforce. You can follow her at TIFFANI_BOVA, or somewhere on the islands of Hawaii. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, thanks for being here. And yes, indeed.
Congrats. Right. This is must read, everyone. And follow Tiffani on Twitter, Tiffani_Bova. Thank you so much, Tiffani.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Cheers. Happy Friday.
I'll have to get on her show,
Yeah, but listen, Ray, we're talking like Hollywood stars go on our show. You and I got to do another. You got to do the show for another 5 years before we qualify. All right. This is what we call the cleanup hitter spot. The final guest comes in and hits a grand slam, and there's no question Michael's going to do that. Our final guest for episode 234, Michael Liebow, is recognized top 100 cloud influencer and has spent his entire career advising numerous CEOs and C-suite executives on market-shaping initiatives and growth programs in broad range of categories. Michael has driven numerous digital business transformation initiatives at companies ranging from startups to large global multi-national organizations. He was most recently the global leader and managing director at Accenture's cloud platform business, where he grew from concept to managing over $300 million of cloud spend, with sales of cloud-related services in billions of booked revenue. Prior to that, Michael served as CEO, a board member, and an executive resident in several portfolio companies of New Enterprise Associates, a top 3 global venture capital firm. Michael successfully exited 2 companies, including a third concept in partnership with my company, Salesforce. You can follow Michael on Twitter at NLIEBOW. Welcome, Michael, to DisrupTV.
Well, thank you, Val. It's great to be here. And back in those venture days is when you and I connected.
That's right. I remember. You were doing some really advanced work back then. So advanced, I'm not sure. Capabilities that I didn't know any company that was able to deliver the vision that you were trying to bring to life at the time you spoke. So you truly are a pioneer.
Thank you.
This is amazing too. Think about it. You were there before the jam crackers. Think about that. Jam cracker, Equinix, like all these hosting companies, like where are they now? Right? Cloud 1 is over. Where's Cloud 2? Let's just jump into that one.
Well, it's I think an important question because it provides context, and it's the batting order here is a little intimidating to follow such great speakers and companies. I think about that in terms of this evolution or journey we've been on. And one of the things that we've tried to articulate is that it is a journey. It's not a one and done. Most organizations are still kind of in the early days. Andy Jassy likes to say it's still day one. And so, there's a lot of innovation, a lot of, value that still remains kind of packed away that needs to be unlocked. And I think in terms of perspective, if you think about cloud, 1.0, I think about it in terms of 3 T's. The first T was transactional. And so in those early days, people would pull out a corporate card and they'd go to Amazon and they'd stand up an environment in seconds. And, instead of having to go through the traditional IT organization and wait weeks or months, from, terms of their typical outsourcer, putting kit on cement. That's a great expression. And so those early days, kind of drove, the notions around DevOps. It created a lot of value for the business in terms of being able to speed, that kind of, stand up development environment, push something into production. But if you really step back and look at it, for the most part, across enterprise, less than 10% of workload was moved to the cloud. So, is that successful? I mean, it grew Amazon, Microsoft, Google, multi-billion-dollar businesses. But really, was that successful? And so I think, the point that we're getting on is that this next phase is transitional. And you have a lot of, legacy players, know them well. They've been investing in capabilities and tools in order to extend from on-prem to off-prem and maybe to, save themselves, right? Survive. But, they're trying to add value. And so in that, transitional phase, who's gotten involved functionally within the enterprise? It's been a lot of, procurement, legal. I mean, because, everyone had to have an enterprise agreement with Amazon. And so they all went through this negotiation, and those negotiations were painful. It took years. And so, but now you're kind of through that from a legal perspective. From a procurement perspective, we're still kind of, I would say, upside down. And what I mean by that is, procurement bought cloud the way they bought data center. And they made multi-year commitments without, based on speculative use of the cloud. And most organizations have underrun those contracts. And so, it's been kind of difficult. And so what are we missing there, right? I mean, it's been largely an IT conversation, maybe to some extent rejuvenation. Migrations have been hard, difficult. Vendors talk about hybrid, which means we keep what we have, we keep data centers alive, all right, and we use the cloud, all right. And honestly, the economic argument of that doesn't foot at all. And so now we're on to the last T, which is transformational. And anything that positive came out of COVID is that. All right. It's driving the discussion. It's moving from 20% of workload in cloud to where we think we're going in the next couple of years, which is upwards of 80% in real cloud. And so the only way you get there is with significant transformational efforts, all right, to move that kind of workload. I think that is the kind of the challenge. If you think about, cloud 2.0, what is that?
So, as a former CEO and an advisor and clearly a lifelong entrepreneur, our first guest, built Workday in 2005 on Cloud 1.0. And today it's a $60 billion market cap company, the most successful SaaS HR solution provider in the world.
Next to Salesforce.
Yes. We saw Coinbase go public a couple of weeks ago, the first public crypto exchange. It was founded in 2012, another $60 billion market cap company built on Cloud 1.0. With a bit more modernization capabilities. And we had Zoom founder on our show. Zoom was founded in 2011, and that's a $94 billion market cap. So 60, 94, all within 15 years or younger on Cloud 1.0 technology. So my question to you, Michael, is will Cloud 2.0, the transformational shift from transactional to transformational, create an environment where companies can be born within handful of years and suddenly find themselves in Fortune 250? Is that the power of Cloud 2.0?
Well, I think we've looked at that, when you step back and look at Fortune 500, because I just spent some time kind of analyzing, the shifts and actually put together the math around this kind of value migration that is likely to occur over the next 10 years. And what I'd say, looking at 19 different industries, that there's more than $1 trillion worth of value, EBITDA, that is out there and ready for the grab, right? I mean, so if you're not investing in the capabilities that are required, you're not going to get more than your fair share of this value, all right? And the value is not about IT. It's not about, optimization of your environments. It's not about, managing risk. It's not about, kind of just managing those IT costs. It's really about the business value, unlocking the business value that cloud affords, or really think about cloud as that catalyst. We talk about disruption, right? All your guests, are focused on that. We talk about digital business transfer. Cloud is the enabler for all of this. Yeah. And the reason is that if I need 10,000 cores this weekend, I'm not going to go through my service request system or my capital expense management process or whatever. I need it this weekend. And so, cloud, that elasticity, to have that kind of compute, that kind of power, in people's hands. We talk about democratization of compute. Well, this is where we are. That ability, and it's not just the cloud providers have invested. You talk about capital, right? They've invested billions and billions. Upwards of $60 billion a year in capital. The three hyperscalers are so far ahead of anybody else in terms of the build out. It's been unprecedented, and it's been going on for greater than the last 10, 15 years. And so that's what enables a Zoom in the early days of the pandemic to scale up overnight 5,000-6,000 servers. Eric, was quoted as saying, in a quarterly financial call, that in those early days he needed like 6,000 servers a night.
Wow.
In order to meet the demand.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Workday runs on Amazon and Google Cloud. There's the partnerships where scale's name of the game, and you're gonna focus on your core competency, and you're gonna find a strategic partner that allows you to scale with the proper security and capabilities that the world demands.
Right. Going to cloud is not about cost management per se. It is about economics, certainly.
No,
But
those cloud
really it's
economics are
about
huge.
Speed and scale. That's why you go to cloud.
That's right.
No, those cloud economics are huge, and one of the things that we saw was, a company like Verizon Media that owned Yahoo, right? They were the largest customer of an ERP system, supply chain management software, right? Because they had to put all this stuff together to take servers in Nebraska and all the components and build them into the data centers. I mean, that's like cloud economic scale. I mean, which is totally different than everyone else. I mean, we're talking like numbers that companies would only imagine just for compute power. So, but hey, speaking about that, I mean, we're in the middle of this transition, like hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. Like, are we going to get deeper and start getting into pure cloud, or will you like shift back and show up on premises with mainframes?
Yeah.
Or my mainframe becomes my blade. Like, is that ever going to happen?
A lot of CEOs will say, once, you're not going back. I know some vendors would like to, think about the word repatriation. I don't buy it. In the next 10 years, and I looked at this, across those 19 industries, I looked at over 700 use cases. And so when we talk about the business value, and it was mentioned several times so far, even on this call, right? You're talking about machine learning, advanced analytics, IoT, you're talking about automation. That, no organization that I know, when they talk about new workload, is talking about on-premise. And so when I looked at those 700 use cases across these, 19 industries, guess how many were, remained on-premise? What was the number of this over 700? When you actually look at them, unpack them, and you think about that in terms of, what can be in cloud, all in, what can be accelerated by cloud, but what remains on premise. And we're talking about over the next, 10 years, 2030. What do you think?
I hope the number is really small. But our research shows an average enterprise has 840 some odd applications, only 26 are integrated. So that tells me that there's still quite a bit of footprint of on-prem, but
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's probably less than 20% has moved. We think over the next 10 years that, we'll get to 80%. Of the use cases, only 7% might have a case to staying on-prem. Because of some regulatory or compliance issue.
So
right?
It's not even a technical issue or business issue. It's a regulatory one.
Right. It's because the rules haven't caught up with the reality. Sure. And I think, if you think about, and you asked Aneel this, right, in terms of the future, I would pick off that 7%. Right. I would look at, kind of, if I was a startup, where I could create the leverage, because, I think it's fair picking, right? You could go after those, and you can innovate and come up with. But listen, if you're an energy company and you're managing a nuclear plant, sure. It needs to be air gapped. It needs to be in a bunker, right? I mean, there are things that you might not ever, right?
Faraday cages wanted.
But that's going to be niche. It's going to be specialty. I wouldn't want to build a growth case around that.
Absolutely. Michael, which executive persona do you find yourself most in front of advising this, the transformation? Is it the CIO, CTO, CDO, Chief Digital, Chief Data, or do you see CEOs really wanting to be involved in terms of the technology vision and roadmap?
So I think in order to move to this next phase in terms of transformation, it has to be CEO driven.
Wow.
It has to have the board has to be in lockstep. The board has to endorse and support. And so what does that mean? And I think what it means is that we need Mars shots. We need moon shots. We need CEOs to drive an ambitious agenda in order to then drive the rest of the organization leadership, because in a lot of respects, they may give it lip service. They may not get along. And so unless you establish that like 2-year horizon with what, that moonshot, that ambitious goal, that aspiration, you have to force it so that you get the alignment across the organization. And I think once you establish that, then the second step is, what is the economic case in order to drive that set of activities?
Absolutely. We need more Aneel Bhusris.
That's what that first step is already so hard, right? I mean, most companies can't do that. We are here with Michael Liebow, strategic advisors to some of the top global cloud companies, as well as businesses out there. You can follow him on Twitter at MLIEBOW, Mikey Likey. I think that's what your Twitter handle's saying right now. So thanks for being on the show. We'll see you back in the green room. So
thank you, Michael.
Thanks. This is wonderful.
Thank you, sir. You were terrific. Wow. Ray, my head is truly spinning. You're truly correct when you said godfather of industry. Aneel is clearly a titan of industry in the HR and now ERP space. And Tiffany, certainly best-selling author and a growth expert. And Michael has been helping companies transform for decades. So that was a fast hour, my friend. That was really a fast hour. Your takeaways of episode 234.
You know what? We got a pioneer in the cloud startups, and of course, one that really understands where the future of business is headed, right? Tiffany's really talking about growth. I think the country's ready for this. We're starting to get there. Vaccinations are in place. We have the option to do that. And more importantly, I mean, Michael's seen it all as to how this cloud adoption. And it's funny. I always joke about the fact that I've been talking about the cloud since 1999. This is ridiculous. It's like the slowest adoption ever. But Aneel's right. I mean, this thing is here. It's here to stay. It's going to be with us for quite some time. It's not just the business model, the technical model, but it is really a transformation in the business way of life. I mean, you're living it. Other companies in this cloud companies are living it. And it's the foundation for cloud data analytics, automation, and AI, which is really taking place in almost every single industry. So that is the big shift. What about you, Val? What's going on? So,
hey, listen, you're right. We've been talking about it since March 8, 1999, the birth of Salesforce. Same year Alibaba was born. So, global end-to-end, start of the cloud revolution. But it's, business transformation is boardroom discussion now. So let's just know that, as Michael said, CEOs have to get in the game. You have to have skin in the game, and you have to really help drive a sense of urgency, because frankly, if you're not doing it, you're going to fail. As you always remind people, Ray, 52% of Fortune 500 disappeared in the 21st century. So no company, regardless of size, is immune to disruption, including the biggest companies in the world. So, I hope our guests listen to these titans that we bring on the show, because in 20 minutes, they're trying to convey information to help guide your business, your career, your vision and success. And, that's what we're trying to do. And certainly we're better for it, you and I and our audience. Next week, episode 235, we have Darren Ross, CEO of IFS, as our guest. We have Ben Pring, Vice President, Head of Thought Leadership and Director at Cognizant's Center for Future of Work. Ben is brilliant. And a surprise guest that we'll announce by hopefully early next week. But we're going to cross 221 interviews in 5 years next week's episode. So if it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Thank you for joining us. Ray, closing remarks, please.
No, everybody stay safe as we open up. Hope everyone gets vaxxed. And more importantly, if you want a vaccination, definitely get one, because they're quite available. So I'm off to get Moderna #2, and maybe I'll be out for 48 hours or hopefully less. So take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.